Welcome to Geek Out Weekly, the podcast where we geek out, not so strongly. Roughly every 7 days? I still don't like that part.
Mm-hmm. Needs to be tightened up slightly.
Well, so it used to, I was tried on a roughly 7 day basis, and that seemed like too many words. But roughly every 7 days is a little better, but I think I bailed halfway through. Anyway, speaking of not bailing halfway through, we watched a movie. Oh, also, I'm Adil, and this is Ben.
Hey!
Yep, that's how, again, tight opening is what we usually aim for. It sucks because I had the segue of not bailing halfway through somehow, because we watched the 4 hour 20 minutes. I've already forgotten.
No, I think it's like 4 hours and 1 minute and 30 or something like that. But I suppose because
basically 4 hours.
Yes, 4 hours.
Yeah. Suspense, of course, not really there because everyone sees the title on the video or on the episode, but for the sake of audio completion, of course, we are talking about the Snyder Cut. That's Zack Snyder's Justice League. Right. So, boy, lots of things we could do. You've got lots of notes. Good, because I think we've realized over the last little while that recaps aren't really our style.
Yes.
So we're going to jump around a bit. We're going to assume you're familiar roughly with things, but we'll also have spoilers. But this isn't going to be a very beat by beat conversation. First thing I wanted to do, though, as always, is initial thoughts. Ben. Get to the juicy bits right away, right?
Yeah. There's parts of this I very much prefer to the original theatrical cut. There are also parts of this which I think ruined some of the additional elements, and we will talk about like direction and all of those sorts of things. But there's certain things that just killed certain scenes for me, or the impact that those scenes were going to have. It feels so pretentious in so many ways that whilst I think, at least on reflection of a day, I prefer it to the theatrical cut, theatrical version, this isn't fantastic for me. It's better than the original cut, but it isn't in the upper echelons of superhero films for me. How about yourself?
That's a good way of putting it. I prefer it, I think, to the theatrical cut. I think that one of the problems I had with the theatrical cut was that they were trying to do a lot. And having the extra, double runtime essentially allows you to dot more I's and cross more T's.
Yeah.
But it's still not quite my cup of tea.
Very good.
I wasn't like infuriated by it. I also think I had low expectations because the first one wasn't great, and so I feel like the bar for this film is quite low in one sense, despite all of the hype train and years of work and reshoots and extra long run time and fanboys. It was still like, yeah, I like it better than the other one. It did better, some things worse, but more better than worse.
Yeah.
So I think I'm on the same page as you. But you mentioned the original cut. I think it's safe to say, listeners, if you don't know, that the reason why it's called Zack Snyder's Justice League is because due to a family tragedy in the middle of filming Justice League 2017, Snyder bowed out, and they brought DC, or Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon, reasonably fresh off of the Avengers franchise, but also apparently the fairly confirmed rumors were that they were trying to push for more jovial to jump on the Avengers type of success, and that's what Joss Whedon was sort of tasked with. and it resulted in a kind of a disjointed mess.
Yes.
Um, and then for a long time, people were like, we if only we could see Zack's vision, and a lot of toxic DC fans on the internet really were using this as a reason why they didn't get a fair shake.
Yeah.
And now they've had their fair shake, or something.
Something around that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but what? So you also didn't enjoy the original one, but I think I haven't seen Justice League since it came out, or a couple months after. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe when it came to streaming or something along those lines. But like, you know, that window of time, first 6 months of 2017 release.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
No, I watched Justice League last year at some point. I can't remember why. I think Kim saw. It wasn't because I didn't watch it because I was interested in it. Let me say, I think it came more from my wife saying, "Hey, look, here's a Batman Superman film we haven't seen. Do you want to watch it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, why not? Sure." Yeah. Which was last year at some point. I hadn't.
Might it have been around Wonder Woman?
So it was definitely. I would say it was about 6 or so months before Wonder Woman. Yeah, so it's probably around the summer of last year. It's definitely lockdown times. You know, when we're looking for other things to kind of watch.
So anywhere between the past 6 months and 5 years. Yes, I get you.
Absolutely. Yeah. But apart from that, I'd seen Man of Steel. Going back through these films that lead up to this, I'd seen Man of Steel. Again, probably that was around the time that it released, or the time that it came to home viewing, that I actually watched that. But I never watched Batman vs Superman. And Justice League didn't make me feel like I should watch Batman vs Superman, but the Snyder Cut did. And I don't know whether that's because Snyder Cut opens differently and has those final kind of, not the final scenes from Batman vs Superman, but has some of that cut in as the intro to this film. I'm like, a lot of stuff must have happened in that film that I have no idea about. The relationship between the characters and all of this stuff. And I think the Snyder Cut made me care. And I think this is actually a general thought for the entirety of the everything that Snyder Cut. It made me care more about the DC movie universe than the theatrical version did.
That's interesting. I kind of have the opposite. Well, not the opposite. I have had a different the relationship to Batman versus Superman hit me differently. I think probably because it's been. I've seen Batman vs Superman exactly once. I've seen Justice League original cut exactly once. Both times sort of around when they came out, and I, having seen bits of this movie before, but not knowing I can't remember. I couldn't remember at the beginning of this what was in BVS and what was in Justice League.
Sure.
And then I was like, okay. And then the movie started referring to things, and then I should have put myself in the shoes of someone who hasn't seen Batman vs Superman. Like, this is very confusing. Partly for me because I don't remember what I saw, and maybe was in this movie then cut, but also it really thinks you've seen that movie in a way that like is kind of shocking for an expanded double runtime movie. And I think this goes along the lines of what you were saying, which is they expanded things, but somehow a lot of those expansions, for me at least, feel like they weren't enough still. Like, I almost feel like this needed to be like a WandaVision. Like, WandaVision's runtime is 2 hours longer than this entire thing. And then you might have got enough of the backstories and some of the, like, wait, what? Smooth out, because even at 4 hours, there was just these moments of this doesn't make sense repeatedly. And yeah, so circling back on the previous point I interrupted myself on. I was kind of like bewildered at where's Superman? Like, they opened shot with like Lex Luthor standing in front of something, and then it cut away, and then we didn't really deal with that except at some point in the movie in the last act Batman refers to, and like Alfred are talking or something, like, oh yes, like Lex Luthor predicted, and you're like, what?
Yeah, did
Like,
it?
how am I still getting confused by this movie 3 hours in? Because
as a point to that, it also it cuts a lot of stuff as well from the theatrical version. So there's that whole through line trying to make you care about like humanity by having people inhabiting the space where Steppenwolf
that's right.
goes to put the mother boxes. Hopefully, listener, viewer, you know what we're talking about because we're getting into it now, right? So there's that through line of this family and the little girl hiding under the table and all these sorts of things where the parademons start to go out and about, and they put the big shield up when he gets the second box, and all of these sorts of things, and significantly changing the end of this film. But there's part where Superman and Barry, where they have to help all of these people escape. Snyder Cut just cuts out. It's just gone.
Which because it's happy about and
well, it's actually one of the things I thought was quite a good change. Like it wasn't needed in the theatrical cut. I don't know why it was sort of, they're like, oh, we need you to care about humanity more. So here is the embodiment of humanity having to flee and be helped by the superheroes to get away from this. And suddenly that's gone, and the film's better for not including that kind of bit. Well, so I think even with all of these expanded bits and then removing lots of bits from the theatrical cut, it does still feel like it needed, for what it wanted to do, just needed it needed like 30 minutes more or something.
Which is fucking bonkers. Like this is when I like sat back and thought about it this morning, because spoiler alert, I didn't finish it all in one go.
Neither did I.
I took a break at every it's divided into 6 parts and an epilogue, which is just shy of the runtime of a part, so it's 7 parts. But yeah, I found it. I was like, I wish I knew when these were coming, kind of. But I ended up looking up a runtime list, and it was just like, cool, this part's over. Like, oh, a couple parts I kind of watched and like stretched, and then watched 2 in a row. But most of them I was taking like reasonable breaks of like going downstairs, making a tea, or grabbing a beer. The beer part was yesterday. Don't worry about me, Twitch chat. But yeah, and yeah, at the end I just sat there being like, yeah, it should have been longer. But also, yeah, okay, we've opened a bunch of tethers. Let's just focus on the structure. Your 4-hour movie is 6 parts that are labeled. You made a TV series.
Yeah.
Just fucking own it. I get that not all the parts are episodically length, but just like Mandalorian had that one 20-minute episode and a couple 40+ minute episodes or whatever.
Same as WandaVision.
You made a TV show.
Yeah. This
was the Justice League TV show, and I'm real annoyed that when they, like, during the hype train, they're like, we're gonna have a Snyder Cut, and then they're like, we're gonna have a 4-part miniseries, and then obviously Snyder's like, I don't know how to cut this into 4 parts.
Yeah.
And then like a perfect length episode. So then they made it a movie again, but a 4-hour movie, that is split into 6 parts that have their own arcs and titles that refer to them and are also very pretentious.
Yes.
But like, this isn't a movie. It's just not a movie.
No, you're right. It's not a movie.
It's fine that it's not a movie. I just wish they had. Like, one of the things I was apprehensive about with this was a 4-hour movie. Jesus. But actually, it was quite easy to be like, yeah, I can take a break, because you're taking a break.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cutting the title cards. Like, and also, I don't mind this idea of, like, if you release a series as a binge, which is essentially what this is, right? You just don't have interstitial credits, opening titles and closing titles. Like, just placard next show, placard would be great.
Yeah.
Instead of hoping things like Netflix have that weird 5-second timer that you have to like click or not click. It's like if you're going to release it as like a chunk but divided, I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, yeah. I hadn't really thought about it like that when I was watching it through. Even though I took similar breaks. I hit the first part. I think the first, maybe not the first two. Actually, I think it was about halfway through the second kind of chapter that I took a break, only because I had to, because the daughter was eating her lunch and I had to go and do some stuff. I then watched a big chunk of it last night, or most of it last night, and had the last, I think, 30 minutes, which was the epilogue, roughly, which I watched this morning whilst the family was eating breakfast and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, so we'll get on to the epilogue later. So you remember quite a bit of the OGJL versus ZTJL?
Well,
or is it just like some things stood out?
Excuse me. I think I don't. I was watching through this film thinking, this seems familiar. Like, is this a part that was in the original cut, or is it expanded on the original? And I just feel like I should know what's going on. There's lots of parts in this that they've completely changed as well. You know, dialogue which just isn't used, that is used in the theatrical cut. There's that scene where they're talking about like how to resurrect Superman, and I'm pretty sure, I do not know for certain because I cannot remember, but there's a part where Jason Momoa's Aquaman, like, he sits on the lasso of truth and then spouts off that he's like scared and stuff like that. That just isn't in this.
Oh, that sounds incredibly Joss Whedon reshoots though. Like, if you think about it,
and right? And that just isn't in this. And I'm watching this through going, where is this? Where was that bit? Was that even in this? Have I made this up? So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, in my mind, thinking, I'm sure this happened in that film, but like having seen it for however long it's been, 9 months or something, I cannot be certain what is and what is not part of the original kind of cut or not. Obviously, the whole Darkseid being the
actual villain,
the big bad,
which so that gets to a good point that I want to touch, which is as a comic book nerd, there were things that made me go wee.
Yes.
And like having actual anti-life equation be referenced, though I think it was not needed in this film. But like, and Darkseid actually being in there, even Granny Goodness being in the background of some scenes but not saying anything, but like actually seeing the bad and understanding it more. So I think part of that was, in the original one, I remember it was just Steppenwolf, and it was all kind of they were hinting at, because they were hoping to they were doing that horrible thing of assuming you're going to make a sequel, and so like Darkseid will be the bad guy next time, and it was like, no, he needs to be the bad guy here. And Steppenwolf being a pretty generic villain as well in the way the CG was done, etc. Like, and he not having a lot of scenes, but I think one of the reasons why Steppenwolf feels like a better enemy is because you have him playing off of his actual boss, right?
Yes.
He gets dialogue, and you get to see his placement in the world and why he's trying so hard. And it's not just generic bad guy taking over the world, I guess, for someone else. So I thought that was really well done.
Absolutely.
And again, also feeds my like nerd reference. Woohoo!
Completely. And I guess it's with all of the stuff that was originally shot, and then Joss Whedon having to come in and make, I would assume, massive cuts to get it down to a runtime that the studio wanted it to be put out at, roughly. He knows that with these films you need that little bit of just those little moments, in Avengers. Another cat's run away from the door. He was going to let the cat out, but the cat ran away. No. Dorian's off. He's done for the day. He's listened to enough of our bullshit. He's finished. So Whedon coming in off of his experience with Avengers.
Yeah.
He knows that you need these little hints, these little tidbits of what the big bad is. You know, Thanos was primed in the first Avengers movie before being the big bad, 5, 10, 50,000 films later. We had glimpses of that. And I think just the way that DC's gone about all of their films and the structure and how they've released and all of this kind of thing has just been very, very odd, and there's not been a through line by anyone going, actually, maybe we do need to put Darkseid in this, and just start to hint at that and build on it, so we can show that this is like a cosmic universe. Obviously, we already know that Superman comes from another planet, but it's not just Superman. It wasn't just this one planet. There's lots of other things out there, and this cut does that quite successfully, I think.
Like having the Martian Manhunter in for like 3 scenes, not really doing anything.
Yeah, doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, he pokes Lois, right? That's it.
And it's funny because you think
that scene felt really dumb, except it was like, well, we know Martian Manhunters, and then he comes in the end, right? And it's like, okay, which is hilarious because, like, so one of the things that Marvel has had is a Kevin Feige, right? And DC didn't have that, and that kind of, from what I understand, Zack Snyder sort of slipped into that role because Christopher Nolan's like, no, I made my Batman.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah. Although Christopher Nolan does get an executive producer credit in this film.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, that's it forever. He's just an EP on every single DC movie now.
But I think that Snyder kind of got put in this role that he didn't necessarily want. But you're right. Like, the other thing is they wanted Avengers money and Avengers right away. In like, there was a lot of think pieces when Justice League OG came out. I think JLOG is better than OG JL. But JLOG came out, and there was a lot of think pieces about how they were rushing, basically. Same thing with Batman versus Superman. It's like you're rushing to try and you need to do the individual movies to get because the team ups don't have the time to do the depth that you need for audiences to care. And that's a thing that this does a little better because you have more time. But ultimately, I still think the premise of this movie is flawed because we don't care enough about any of the people.
Absolutely. I didn't even realize that Aquaman came out after the original release of Justice League. I thought he was already an established. Yeah, right. Was Batman versus Superman the first thing she was in?
Yes. She was in for like 2 scenes, and that was the big holy crap.
Absolutely nuts. Just nuts. Surely you need to care about these characters before. I mean, I can understand why they want to introduce new characters, and you get Barry and you get Cyborg, but also for then Aquaman to be a new character, even though he feels a bit more established. Now, they don't spend quite as much time on Aquaman as they do with Flash and Cyborg. It's kind of, again, talking about, what is bad about this film also extends to the whole of the DC universe or movie universe. It's just a mess. So much of this that just is a mess.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that you can't get away from. So I wrote down. So I have like my notes that are a couple pages, and then like quick things I wanted to bring up. And on my list of possible topics to chat about, I just wrote video gamey, and I want to know if you can figure out what I meant by that.
Video gamey.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know.
And then I also put Tomb Raider puzzle.
No, I don't know. You'll have to explain. I'm not.
Yeah, I figured as much because I mean these are just like things like so. Tomb Raider puzzle was the very stupid "we set Grace on fire. Hopefully Wonder Woman will know what this means" thing, which was dumb in the first one. So I mean, this is one of those things where general complaint that I want to get into more details and actual examples after this, but of just how so much happens in service of a shot or the plot and doesn't really make sense.
Yes.
But this is some ruin, the Hall of the Amazons. They, oh no, we're fucked. Fire Artemis's arrow that signals to man that we're in trouble. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully that will tell Wonder Woman that means we're in trouble here, because she'll know. And then Wonder Woman sees it from France. This fire goes there. There's no guards to this vandalized ancient site.
Yep, she just wanders in.
She kind of goes to signify to the audience, oh, she's sneaking.
Mm.
And then she just walks in her heels, picks up the arrow, and then just jumps into a pit. And you're like, oh, I guess those ruins have a pit.
Just open pits going down into the ruins. Yep.
And then right there, at the end of the pit where you'd think a door would be, just a shape of an arrow. And you're like, so these archaeologists are the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? They didn't think about it. Obviously, this is impenetrable stone, because they wouldn't have been like, oh, this looks like a door. I guess an arrow is the key. We could possibly figure out how to get past this, so we didn't.
Mm.
And she puts the arrow in, making no sense, because this is just Artemis's arrow to signify. Earlier in the film, they tell us the arrow is to signify we're in trouble to man. Not we're in trouble about Darkseid. Just we're in trouble.
Yes.
Kind of the vibe they get. And I think in the original cut, they kind of said that a little stronger. And then the door opens, and it's a painted set of frames explaining Darkseid and his plan and everything. And that was one of the moments where it's just like, fuck you. Because earlier I was like, wait, so if you're the Amazons, we open on them, and there's just this amphitheater type situation of all these Amazons staring at a mother box before it cracks. And then it cracks, and they're like, oh no! It's like, what were you doing beforehand? Because, like, what...
Do they have shift changes around this? Is this just standard guard duty for Amazons? Someone has to, or there's loads of them as well. There must be 40 of them.
Yeah, the Atlanteans had a couple of guys on guard, and that rotated. It made sense. But then the Amazonians were just afraid of it. But then for cinematic reasons, the crack shows up in front of us, which means they were afraid of it when it. What?
Yeah.
And it was just very confusing cinematically, and then. Their whole situation is, okay, if it comes in trouble, we'll close these gates so no one can get out of... Right? That's their security system, is some Amazons on the ready to bash these trunks of wood to close the gates that she has to slide under dramatically. But then also, the whole thing falls into the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe why bother with the gates? If the plan is, you knock these pillars down, and then the whole thing crumbles off of a cliff. Does it matter if you left a door open? It's just so video gamey in the sense of what we complain about, or why some people complain about video games being because the puzzle takes precedence over plausibility, and that whole sequence was just ridiculous. It's none of this makes sense. Also, in that scene, sorry, I'll go back to that scene because it does a bunch of things which are weird, but so then we fast forward to Diana opening and seeing this thing, and then you're like, wait, right, Diana grew up on Themyscira, right? One of their sacred duties is to guard a magic box. That she didn't know anything about that sacred duty.
Yes.
And she knew nothing about it until she got the arrow and went into the pit where the secret message room was, and she learned about it so she could tell Batman. And you're like, okay, you're trying to tell the audience that she knows about this for exposition reasons, but then she just tells Batman in flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So you just don't trust that the audience would figure out that she knew this because she grew up on Themyscira, and it just that type of thinking, that lack of trust, is so prevalent in this entire thing.
Completely, it's the same with the other Wonder Woman scene. I can't remember. It was the one that they introduce her, where she's in London and she saves the kids when the terrorists are coming in to bomb the thing, and they're like, we want to take Europe back to the Dark Ages. We want to basically just blow up the monetary system and all this sort of stuff. Never spoken about again. Just a complete throwaway idea, complete throwaway bad guy, just in service to saying, here's Wonder Woman. This is what she does. She does some stuff, and I think they inserted a couple of times just before that this like random. It's not even music. It's just this wail that happens as soon as she comes into it. Like, wail. I was like, what the fuck is this? Why have you put that in? And then it kicks in with her, like the Wonder Woman music, that action thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's why have you got this random scream in this? And again, and it was in both. That was in the original cut of this as well. That scene just randomly kind of placed in. But you're right, it doesn't trust the audience to understand kind of what's going on. And to just build on that a little bit more, there's a scene that I absolutely loved, which wasn't in the original, which was the introduction to Barry Allen to Flash, where he goes in for the job in the dog grooming parlor to be a dog walker.
Yeah.
And the woman he bumps into is going to get in a crash, and it introduces
gets in a crash.
Yes. And it introduces his powers. And it does the slow motion to show his powers and puts that piece of music against it very, very well. And it's set excellently. It's shot very well. It's cut, unlike everything was like cut. It stays and lingers on a few shots and things like that to show that slow motion. And I thought it was beautifully done. It's a very, very cool scene. It's absolutely ruined for me by two things. Firstly, why do we need to see Jason Momoa stood on the edge of a pier and have slow motion shots of the water across him and all of these other slow-mo things? It just completely takes away from that shot. If we had no slow motion up to that point, that would have been much more impactful in what it was doing. And secondly, just to finish,
I just wanted to add on
the hot dog. He absolutely did not need, and again, it's showing the audience or suggesting that the audience are stupid. And I've got this issue with objectification and Zack Snyder in previous films, and I don't know who wrote it or who thought it was funny, because it absolutely screams dick joke that this hot dog is flying towards her face to smack her in the face, and instead Barry grabs it out of the air and puts it in his pocket, in service of him then going back into the dog groomers and the dog's going nuts and him saying, I always carry around a meat snack for dogs. You could have still done that and known that, and the audience go, he's super fast, he could have just grabbed one of these out of the air, without us having to see this potential stupid objectification dick joke in there, and him stopping that from happening, because it just ruins the scene, and B, it just says you're stupid for not realizing he's super fast.
Yeah,
and he could.
I didn't actually pick up on that being possibly male gazy. I just thought it ruined the pacing, because he's in a rush. He's saving her. He is going. I think they're trying to say he's super fast, so he has the time to do this.
Yes,
but it just felt like indulgent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I didn't even think about the phallic part.
And it's interesting because they take it's shot differently. A lot of the ways in which they shoot Wonder Woman or present Wonder Woman in this film take away from that kind of very male gazy stuff that was on her during that original cut. So to have this in here, and it might not have been their intention, but at least when I watched it, it definitely came across that way.
That's interesting. Yeah, the thing I wanted to talk about, which is a big deal for me, because I think is the abuse of slow motion. One, it's just not great to do all the time.
Yeah.
It's a really lazy trick to make things seem impactful, especially when you're like, and then I will put a slow score. But I'm glad you brought it up, because I was very annoyed at how slow motion was very specifically important to a character and showing their powers, and then it was, like you said, everywhere else. But also, if you think back to that sort of Wonder Woman is stopping a crime, which I don't mind in general. Like, and they gave the criminal like some reasoning of why they just wanted to. What they wanted to do is have. There's no way you could negotiate. She had to go in because, like, it was clearly basically they just wanted to make it so the stakes were clear and there was no middle ground for this throwaway scene. But again, when you in this day and age, when you conjure up, oh, this person's an anti-capitalist, and then you leave it alone, it kind of don't work as well.
Yep.
But I get what they were trying to do, make it very clean, like he's going to kill everyone. But they do fast motion, slow motion, fast motion, slow motion to show she's just like kind of like her perspective versus maybe theirs seeing her. Because like sometimes she's like pew pew, or like, oh no, a bullet, stretch. And other times she's just, you're like from the perspective of the regular human watching
people,
her.
Yes.
And it's really juddery, and you're like, okay, I get kind of stylistically what you're doing, but then to have slow motion be the indicator of a power, and then it's like, okay, slow motion means someone is going at a faster speed, so they are perceiving things differently only when there's lightning bolts. Oh wait, but Superman also sometimes does that.
Yep.
Like, you just lose the cinematic language is so watered down, pun intended, given the scene you mentioned. Like, what is the point? And also, what is the point of, like, you just needed to make sure Aquaman had X seconds? Because, like, it was very established that, like, I actually thought it was so much better when he disappeared into the sea after talking to Batman.
Yes,
that showed,
absolutely. Yes.
No bubbles, nothing. He's gone. He's gone to sea. And then to be like, generic saving from a storm, fine. You get it. You're reintroducing, like, he's the guy who said no to the call, but he's still a heroic person. He saves someone from the sea, charges a bottle of whiskey. But then the slow-mo throwing the bottle, like, oh, yeah. What is that supposed to mean? Except Zack Snyder thinks it's cool.
Absolutely. I don't mind smouldering Jason Momoa. Put him smouldering in wherever you want. That's fine. Smolder, Adel, smolder. But it just didn't need all of that framing. Didn't need all of that kind of slow motion effect. Like, it does work in the original cut, the way that he disappears into the sea and all those sorts of things. It just and again just takes away from the impact when it's used elsewhere.
So the other thing is, well, there's a bunch, but I'm just glancing at my notes here. I did want to talk about, and I recognize we're at 40 minutes. This will go along the lines of not trusting the audience, but let's actually, I think the best way to talk about this is like talking about how this is secretly Cyborg's film, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought Cyborg was the good through line. Also, it makes a lot of sense because it's about parenthood and being there, not being there, etc. Which, of course, given Snyder's daughter's suicide, that sort of made him leave the film. Originally, it kind of makes sense that so much of this film is attached to parents, which it already kind of was.
Yes.
It's a big theme in Batman versus Superman and the infamous Martha scene. So we get this, like, he's at a football game and then there's a crash and like stupid shit where it's like he's staring off in the stands and like, so this is what I mean by not trusting the audience. So it's like he's staring off into the stands and there's one seat empty, but it's kind of in the middle of the crowd. You don't even really notice the way it's shot whether his mom is beside that seat.
Yes.
It just looks like an empty seat, and you're like, is that the seat reserved for his dad at the university stadium? It's like, fuck you. Like, and then especially because then they cut away to be like, your dad couldn't make it. It's like, just have him looking sad after being happy, and then cut to dad wasn't here. That's still super handholdy.
Yep.
But the long lingering shot that's like done with a slow pan, and everything's kind of blown out of focus. Except like it's just cinematic garbage.
Yes, absolutely.
That doesn't make sense for the scene. And then, I mean, he's a lot better looking than the original cut, I think, but he's still pretty CGI Borg. But like his dad's speeches all don't quite make sense, like on the recording. They're just sort of heartstring one-liner type things, but like in the context of the film, it's just like, I care about you. And
absolutely, and like I like a lot of the kind of the extra back stuff they give and fleshing out these characters some more. But there's a scene, and again, I don't know if it was in the original, where he gives a woman a ton of money.
Because, I was going to bring that one up. Yeah,
because somehow he's able to tap into whatever he's tapping into to see her life.
No,
and like finding the eviction notice on the door, like unless he's tapping into
security camera,
right?
It was supposed to be, yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's like he's walking down the street and he sees this person at the bank machine, and then he like goes through all the internet because he has access to all the internet and all the things, which at the time we don't know why, and I found that really frustrating because again, it's just the way it's cut, which is this weird like we don't trust you, but also we don't tell you anyways, because it's like we find out later the reason why he's got magic cyborg powers is because he's got Mother Box technology in him. But we don't find that out for another like hour and a half. So now we've got his dad saying, you can do anything with any technology. And there's this montage of nuclear weapons and all this really weird visuals. And you're like, and he's like, and you're the only one. You're like, and from our perspective, it's like, he's a scientist who made his kid do a thing. Why wouldn't, like, if it can be done once, it can be done twice. That's science. So why wouldn't there be another person? Like you being a master of all the things, like it's just like you've got the fate of the world in your hands. You're one of a kind. It's like I don't understand why, and you're not. There's no context clues for me to figure out why. So now this doesn't make sense. And then you have in these visuals, you can control the stock market, and it shows the bear and bull statues in front of the New York Stock Exchange fighting, and you're like, the hell does this fucking mean?
Yeah.
That's not how this like. If you're trying to say money like has like we have a bear market and a bull market, that's just which one it is. It's not like they fight. It's like you took two physical objects in front of the stock exchange and animated them in a way that doesn't embody not only what they represent metaphorically, but also not what you are saying in your like exposition.
Yes,
it's just mindless bear and bull fight because while the audience couldn't bear, like the audience wouldn't be able to handle a talk about finances without something pretty on screen to bash bish bosh. It was just so aggravating. And
but
then
again, it's a very
lady.
It's a very American kind of view as well, because a lot of people are not going to know what the bear and bull represent.
Yeah,
they're not going to have a clue
and that's not going to help, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then so the point he's making is you could do all these things. This is his dad's speech, right? You can do all these things, and the actual heroic hard part will be not. And then it proceeds to show him snoop on a lady who's having a hard time, doesn't get paid enough, gets evicted, and then he goes to her bank account, makes more money. And like the economist in me is like, that works for one person, but it can't work generally because you increase the money supply, you cause inflation. But like in general, it's like that scene is supposed to show, oh, I want to use my powers for good. But this is what I mean about the speeches being kind of vacuous, because his dad said the hard part will be not doing it, i.e., you can't do the quick solution. But he did. And the movie wanted us to be like, yeah, Cyborg, give that poor lady money. And you're like, what do you do? Like, and there's so many of these disjointed moments in the 5 million hours of this experience, where I'm just like, but what? Because the writing is just not there.
Yep. Absolutely.
Sorry, that was my rant. I read between the bear and the bull, but also I think it's exemplary of a lot of the times where it's just saying things. There's a lot of saying things that don't really fit, except I could believe that line exists in a superhero script. That's how a lot of the things I was like, wait, what? We're just like, yep, that passes superhero script like bar, but of course that's really cynical, right? Because we have good superhero movies and they have to pass good script bar.
Yes, they do. We've talked about a few of the things that we don't like. I think as we're coming sort of, the last little bit of time, something I did want to talk about, which I really enjoyed, was the change to the ending. We've already mentioned that that through storyline about the family living near where Steppenwolf sets up camp or sets up his little base is cut, and the final battle between them and Steppenwolf is completely different, because obviously with the Darkseid inclusion, the Mother Box actually does unite and opens up a portal, so Darkseid is presented to everybody. Superman comes in a slightly different way, who also looks much more badass in the black and grey outfit. Perfect. Yep, that looks really good.
Also, it's also like hitting you in the comic book nostalgia.
Oh yes, right? Yeah. It's because from the very brief stuff I know, I'm not a huge Superman fan, but from the brief stuff I know, the black suit is the suit he wore when he came back to life after a storyline, the death of Batman. It's not Batman, fucking hell. The death of Superman storyline. Yes. So
and he came back without powers.
Absolutely,
and had guns.
Oh, did he? That's how much I know. I just know that he had a black suit, and that this calls back to that, which I thought was good, which looked
and long
good.
hair.
And isn't there 4 Supermen or something as well at some point?
Oh, I mean,
like
do you want to derail this and talk about
no.
Return of the Superman, limited edition DC run?
Let's not get down that far. It seemed to cut that final battle to a slightly shorter runtime as well. It wasn't quite as bloated as it was in the original cut. It didn't feel like it was, and that may be just because of the longer runtime of the entire film, that it felt like just it was a smaller portion of the entirety of this. But it worked a little bit better as well, and their beat down of Steppenwolf and chucking him back through the portal to Darkseid worked better than these things of the parademons eat on fear, and now Steppenwolf is super scared of all of them, and they eat him at the end.
You want your superheroes to do the thing, and having Diana the Warrior actually kill him was really smart, because it kept the usual people, in check. Mm-hmm. Like, Superman doesn't have to do the thing that he did in Man of Steel that we all hated, which was like kill Zod instead of, move his head.
Yes.
Put your hand in front of his eyes.
No, just don't.
Like, again, we don't want to derail on those things. But yeah, it kept Superman wholesome, and I thought the fight with Superman was it felt tight this time. I don't know, like when right after he was resurrected. I don't remember all, but it also did the stupid thing where Clark. There's 2 regular fucking dudes there in earshot. And this is what I mean about things not really be that. So like that scene, like the fight worked really well. I still love the confusion of, he can't quite move as fast as me, but he can follow my movement.
Yes, yeah.
Between Superman and Flash, great. But the shot, we have these. She's by these police officers. She says Clark, but like now we're just all we care about is that she's here to stop Clark, so she could talk to Clark, and everyone else is ignored. But they're there. And then you have this ADR where they say, hold your fire. It's Batman, Superman, and then Lois comes up, and then Lois starts talking to him, and then they say, hold your fire. And you're like, you've been holding your fire. You guys have literally only been holding your fire.
Unless they were talking about shooting Lois, it doesn't make any sense. Yes.
Yeah. Because they had already stopped. It was the line was not she was in front of you, and then she took another step forward, and you're like, oh, better stop not shooting. Again, these lines just feel like, well, they're set in action movies. Like, it's all this surface level stuff that doesn't make sense contextually that really bothered me.
Yep.
And so the 2 things I want to talk about were sequence-wise. Were you mentioned it earlier, the making Superman come to life.
Mm-hmm.
that entire sequence, in fact, the whole part 5, all the King's Horses, if this was like a series, like I sort of alluded to thinking it, that's the weakest episode by far.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the episode that Superman comes back to life in. It should be really important, but it's so much
super impactful. Yeah.
I see what you did there. It was so muddied, and there wasn't. Again, this is where we talked about at the top of the show, right? This lack of actual explanation. So at first they're like, I think the mother box can make him better, and then Batman goes, there's space in the spaceship, I think, that we can use. Like, it was, we need something, and then it's like, oh well, we might as well just go to the spaceship because thing is there. But it turns out that then they put him in the goop. And in the original cut, it was because the matrix of recharging or whatever goop is important, and that's what helps Superman come back to life. But they skip that. That's not part of the explanation.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're just going there out of convenience. Then why would you throw him in the goop?
Again.
And then they have, and it's like, we need to jumpstart the mother box. And then we'll get the robots to drop the box into the goop at the right time. And it's like, so the robots know the plan and you reprogram them, but the plan really was just put the box and the body together, and you just needed a space, and you decided to break into a thing. It's nonsense. And then they're like, oh, but the computer is confused or afraid, and all these extra things. Like, this isn't a plan.
Yes.
This is just completely a series of events that you can cause tension in.
And it kind of makes you think, do they, with this Snyder Cut, is this being pushed out to a wider audience, or are they thinking people who watch Justice League will now watch this version of it because they already have an understanding about what is going on here, that we don't then need to do that, which they don't do with other bits. It's one of those bits where, like, let's cut some of this out without giving you any further explanation and making it just seem a bit arbitrary in why they're in that location. And I know you had another point to make on this, but I think the final thing to chat about in a minute will be the epilogue.
Yes.
But where that scene kind of first gives us that glimpse as well, which I don't think is in the OG version, where Cyborg has a glimpse of the future, or at least some kind of future, and he says no, and Barry thinks he says go, and then runs through that to set off sort of Superman. I don't know whether that was in the original.
There was Apocalypse Batman with the trench coat, etc. That was a scene in the original.
Yeah,
one,
but I cannot remember
not
where
the Cyborg
that came in.
vision. Yeah, I don't think the Cyborg vision was there, but
yeah,
I liked that. I liked the idea, especially because Barry actually cues it up with saying, like, if I go too fast, like, time goes wonky.
Yes,
and then that becomes at that point and another, and like obviously at the integral climax. Yeah. The only thing I wanted to say was was because it was about sequencing, but also I liked, you're right, the way they cut the final battle was a lot more satisfying.
Yeah.
Except getting to the final fight scene was, again, nonsense sequencing, because Batman goes, I'm going first, no matter what, you guys just go forward. And then he keeps talking about how he's going to drag them away. I'm going to pull all the paradigms away so you can get there. But then, for the sake of cool screenshots, essentially, at multiple points in him dragging them away, all of the superheroes are with him.
They're just there, yeah.
And it's like, well, then you're not dragging them away in a way that it wouldn't have just been easier for all of you to attack as one.
Absolutely.
And then split up.
Yep,
like, this is
Batman's not over here fighting,
yeah,
and they don't then have to infiltrate there into the middle of into the base. They're all just here.
Yeah. And then Batman proceeds to go to the left, and then they go to the right. It's like, well, why don't you all just make sure you can get to the Y point together? It really frustrated me, because it just seemed like, well, we want these cool hero, like, two at a time moments, but we haven't figured out how to write it, so we'll just make it happen.
Yeah.
And hope that you won't notice, because bang, boo, zap, right? Like, all these effects are going. You won't care that this plan isn't the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing was just that they couldn't. What I did like was his armor, Steppenwolf's armor disappearing.
Oh yeah,
when he was weakened. Yeah. because they couldn't get through, they couldn't damage him. But then when he was beaten up enough, and you could see it was just his bone and stuff, then suddenly you could stab him in the chest with the trident, and you could lop off his head. And I was like, yes. And you're trusting the audience to that was great, because it was the final, like, yeah, Steppenwolf be dead. And also the two warriors who have no qualms in killing to protect their realms did it, right?
Yep.
All that was so well done, and it was like a moment of trust to the audience. They didn't go, my armor's gone! Oh no! Right? His armor was just gone, and suddenly he was vulnerable, and he died. And then he got sent off to Darkseid, and it was like, yes, cool. Why couldn't that have been throughout the just that was like bittersweet, because it was like, oh, when I clicked, right, the sword didn't work before because his armor's gone, neat. And then I was like, oh, but there's so many points that just it would have been so much tighter if you just didn't waste our time with like the did you notice stuff. So I just thought that was he's a bittersweet. I really enjoyed that fight, but also the reason why I liked it was kind of reminded me of all the bits of the movie that did live up to that standard.
Yeah.
But that's only 6 parts of the film. So I mean, I had it written down, but I lost it. How long the epilogue was, but it's like 20 minutes or something.
It's about 25 minutes, something like that. Yeah. I think it comes in at about the with 30 minutes left, so including the credits. So whatever the credits are, 5-6 minutes or something. Yeah. The standard same length as WandaVision credits. But we won't talk about. Yes, the Nightmare with a K.
Knightmare.
Yes. Yeah. What the fuck was that?
So this is where the hubris, I think, is the whole thing. We've kind of danced around it, but like the overindulgent slow motion, the dialogue that seems impactful, like we got to suit up, or there's a scene, and then Cyborg is like, I'm always suited up, and then takes off his sweater, and you're like, that line does not work the way you think it does.
Yes.
Because he needs to just be, I'm a cyborg, I'm always in my thing, but actually, he's wearing a disguise, so he's not always suited up, and he's actively becoming suited up by taking it off, even though normally it'd be putting it on. Yes, I know that's an inversion, but it doesn't mean you can say the line. It doesn't make sense, but it's the, stock cool one-liners, right? So much of it is, and the hubris of thinking, again, I can just throw these fancy shots. I can just not put the depth because I can just wow you with these grim, dark moments, these slow-mos, and then these one-liners that are stern one-liners versus the more jovial ones in the original cut, right?
Yes.
And this is where all of that comes to a head, because it's just oh, now Deathstroke's on Batman's side. Why do we care?
Yeah. Oh, he's had to make a pact with the Joker. That's how dire the situation is, because he's not going to get people that don't like him to help him.
But also, then there's going to be 10 minutes of the Joker being like, remember how I killed Robin? It's like, oh, I killed Harley Quinn. We have a truce now. Given that Snyder has said he is not going to do another DCEU movie, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yep.
Because the only excuse for that is it's a blatant push for Justice League 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Or at least
even then,
or at least setting up that Affleck Leto Batman versus Joker movie with a Robin of some kind and impactful moments and things, and yet leading up, it just was not needed. And I don't like Leto's Joker.
I mean,
at all.
I don't either, and it's really indulgent of a character who wasn't in the original, didn't need to be in this one, and served no real purpose.
Yes, absolutely.
And hilariously, they shot him looking like Jesus Christ and saying we live in a society, and then the internet laughed at it, and then it's not in the cut.
Yes,
it's a different version of Joker, and you're like, yeah. And then I read an interview, and he's like, yeah, we recorded that, but I think maybe I closed the tab. That's too bad I did. But Snyder literally said, that we live in society. I just think it sounds cool. It was the quote, and I was like, like, this is why I say it's hubris, because if that's your quote, then you aren't thinking deeper, and you aren't, and you have no understanding of like why that was the most comical thing. Putting the meme that your universe is grimdark for the sake of it was being made fun of for, just because you thought it was cool, is like, you can't make this shit up.
Yep.
But yeah, and I think the idea of the epilogue was okay. But most of it, like, you don't need all that Batman time. Martian Manhunter, I think, was part of the epilogue.
Yes,
I can't remember now.
We're going to see Bruce and letting him know he existed. Yeah,
and getting the farm back was fine. Like, the epilogue should have been like that 5 minutes, because the actual part 6 ends with like the ship magically being fixed after crash landing and picking them up.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the ship and flying off the distance is a
she wants
shot.
To fly. Like, all right, Cyborg, chill out. It's just a fucking.
But also another weird thing is they say the mother box are destroyed. Now what? It's like, were they destroyed? Because the plan was to split them apart, and you literally just split them apart, and that was the end. No one.
He didn't then bury it 3 feet in the ground again for no one to ever see. And that wouldn't
destroy them. In fact, I believe a big part of the film was you couldn't destroy them. So why is the line the mother boxers are destroyed now? Like, anyway, so I think the epilogue was just hubris, but I'm wrong, because it's not the height of hubris, because I don't know if you've heard this. Do you know about Justice League Grey?
Yes, I did read about that this morning, yes.
Do you want to enlighten the viewers on what that might be?
I mean, I don't know whether it's going to be completely recut. From my understanding, just a black and white version.
He's working on the finishing touches, so it seems like there's some cut. It can't just be add monochrome filter.
This is the extra 30 minutes we wanted, isn't it? This is where it comes in.
Yeah, so Zack Snyder has said that he will release the Justice League Grey cut for charity.
Okay.
But he's still working on it, which to me means it cannot just be in black and white. But then what else are you doing, and why wouldn't you do it? Like,
it's like... It's like he watched this back. He'd put it together and watched it back and gone, yeah, it's all right. And then 2 weeks later gone, maybe we needed something else in here.
You know what it is? I've just figured it out, Ben. Is there were scenes that he really liked that were filmed with the old suit Superman. But he couldn't use them. But now, if he puts everything in black and white, you won't notice whether it's the blue suit or the black suit. He can use all the shots.
Yeah, he can use some of Whedon's shots then as well.
Yeah,
and make sure Superman. You give Superman a mustache in some of those shots. It's fine, and then just get rid of it in the next one. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
no one gives a shit.
As long as it's black and white,
no one gives a shit.
The audience won't notice. Just do it in slow motion. Add a fan so the stash goes.
Or just make him drink like a chocolate milkshake, and then pretend it's just a chocolate milkshake mustache. And then in the next scene, he can throw the milkshake away, so people know that he is no longer drinking the milkshake, and then he hasn't got one.
Yeah, I believe that was exactly the extent of the reshoots that he did. So, yeah, I mean, there were extensive reshoots for Joss Whedon's cut, and extensive reshoots for this one. Obviously, most of the epilogue was the reshoots, because obviously we didn't have those actors.
Yeah, all of the Leo's stuff, right, was reshot. Yeah, it was new. It was new.
I think also most of the Batman Alfred conversations in the garage, like when they're working on stuff, I think some of those seemed new to me. But anyway, I think that's a good place to end it. Epilogue is hubris. There's more hubris to come. I didn't feel like I wasted 4 hours.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yes,
I think it would be better to watch in 6 parts, and I mean 6 parts, not 7. Fine, it ends fine. It ends fine. No epilogue. Also, it's called Father Twice. So wait, I have to read these titles.
Oh yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
So it's part 1 is "Don't Count on It, Batman," because that tells you that when he meets Aquaman, Aquaman's going to say no. Part 2 is "The Age of Heroes," i.e. flashback heaven. Part 3 is beloved mother, beloved son. And that's a whole lot of...
It's the cyborg stuff, right?
It's cyborg, so yeah. Because his mom died, and his dad loves him, even though he doesn't realize it.
Yeah.
Then we have Chapter 4, Change Machine, which we don't really understand until they had some throwaway piece of dialogue. They're like, so the mother box...
Oh,
so,
yes. It's
anyone can take a
machine.
match to a house and turn it into smoke, but the mother box can turn smoke back into a house. It's a change machine. That's the name of that chapter. But then the bit of the movie I hate the most, part 5, is all the king's horses. Because Superman's Humpty Dumpty. Do you get the reference? Yeah. It's a nursery rhyme reference.
Because we're children being catered to.
They're not the king's horses and men because they figured out how to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Oh, yes.
So, again, it's not really a reference because it doesn't do the thing referred to does. It does the opposite. And then Something Dark. Part 6.
Something Dark? Is that what it was actually called? What does that even mean?
I don't know. And then the epilogue, Father Twice Over. Sure. And again, that doesn't make sense because most of the epilogue wasn't Cyborg's listening to his dad's speech. It was
lots of different bits.
Shit. Yeah. So it doesn't. Yeah. Anyway. So I had to share those titles because I like every part because I was stopping at each part, so I'd start my notes again with I have to write this down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that we could easily go on with other stuff, but I think we did a good job of poking the bear and the bull.
Yeah, getting our general thoughts and our issues out without lingering too much. Getting too into we got into some of the weeds, but yeah, we didn't sit in the swamp for too long.
No,
but yeah. I mean, it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, final thought is it's better than the first one if you like DC stuff, and especially if you read some comics, that involve the New Gods. You'll like some of it. The good references. It's not worth watching all in one sitting.
Absolutely.
But if you're a fan of superhero content, but it's also not a must-watch. I think is where I.
And I can't remember if I said this in our initial thoughts, but if this was going to expand into more films, and this was going to be the continuation rather than them changing up, and we've got the Batman and all of these other things that are happening, which might not be
non-extended universe DC movies. Yeah.
If this was going to be the through line, I think this more successfully sets everything up than the original one does because it shows you that it's on the cosmic scale. It makes it more impactful having Darkseid included and having Martian Manhunts come in, showing a Green Lantern in that initial Age of Heroes fights. It puts in all of these. They're not even Easter eggs. That it's setting things up and allowing you
through
to
lines, which I really appreciate.
Exactly, allowing you to understand that there's lots of other stuff that is going on that will be covered or alluded to or brought up or be the big bad or whatever further on. And I think it does very well in showing that the DC universe or movie universe or entertainment universe or cinematic universe or whatever it's called is cosmic as well. Yes, we know Superman's an alien and Steppenwolf has come from the sky and stuff, but
it changes the scale.
It changes the scale, absolutely, and it does so, I think, quite well.
I think you're right. Like the Martian Manhunter and the Green Lanterns do serve the purpose of being like other worlds, and like the multiple references to Darkseid having hundreds of thousands of worlds.
Yes.
Although the number keeps floating around in a weird way.
No, I
that's
think
fine.
He said he'd killed 100,000 worlds trying to find anti-life, but then they said, or the guy who's not quite called Darkseid but is his
Desaad.
mate. Just make it completely different.
Yeah,
It's just too hard. Saying then to Steppenwolf that he would need to enslave or kill another 50,000 worlds to be brought back into the fold of or being forgiven or whatever.
It's just Flash, like, out of nowhere has a line where he's like, you must have killed hundreds of thousands of planets and killed heroes on those. And they're like, well, hundreds of thousands? That's weird because you've made a point of saying 100,000 on the other side, but also... Well, how would Flash know how many worlds... Like, it's just like Flash would be like...
He's done some stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Wonder Woman told me she found a cave paintings, essentially. I mean, I'm being really mean to the Greeks because it's better than cave paintings, but like paintings in a cave that said, this guy came and we beat him. Don't think the cave paintings were like hundreds of... Like it just... I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting back into it when we're getting out of it.
Yes, let's get out of it. Let's get out of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. It does... By being longer and flushed out, it helps the universe, which who knows what that means now.
Yes.
I think that last time I checked, they did have plans for a DC Extended Universe to continue, although possibly with Flashpoint resetting it, like another but the Batman and the Joker were never parts of the DCEU. They were always standalone films, and I think they're still planning on doing something, and maybe that's why the epilogue has Leto in it, because Snyder's doing it's still a Warner Brothers film, so maybe he's still like
Suicide Squad and that level of, and then the Harley Quinn film and all those sorts of things kind of into the same sort of thing.
Yeah. But so I think that does us for this week. If you have thoughts that are, if you just want to share your thoughts about Justice League or all kinds or things you think we should take a look at, or please, you can email us at podcast@outoflives.net or tweet us at outoflivesnetwork. Outoflivesnet. At outoflivesnet. We are Out of Lives Network on Twitch. I'm at the Omniarch. Ben's
at Nova_47.
And you can also find other podcasts like Tanked Up, the podcast all about video games and craft beer, and VODs, articles, etc. on all kinds of pop culture, geek culture stuff at outoflives.net. That's about it. Please rate, review on your podcast service of choice or YouTube, like, subscribe, whatever. The thing you're using to imbibe this content, do the thing and tell people about doing the thing. Yeah. Please, it helps get reach, but also don't be a stranger. I think that's...
Reach around.
Oh, is this like a Zack Snyder managed to give himself his own reach around?
No. The Joker literally says to Batman, "Who will give you a reach around?" or something like that. I'm sorry. I had to find something to end.
I mean, you have to explain it, because I was like, Ben, that's a terrible joke. Why? Like, it's not good. You can do a lot better off the cuff, let alone multi-million-dollar script writing.
I'd never make that joke. So
yeah. Anyway, so we've been Geek Out Weekly for another week. I've been Adele.
I've been Ben.
Bye.
See ya.
www.outoflives.net